I cannonballed into my own pool and got fined $750. Oh no, this wasn't a rule. This was war. And trust me, she picked the wrong neighbor to spy on with a drone. HOA Karen fined me for using my own pool, so I locked it and blocked access. Part 1. The drone, the fine, and the war begins. I was mid-cannonball into my pool, sun blazing overhead, the kind of perfect Saturday you dream of, when I heard it. A buzzing, high-pitched, artificial, slicing through the air like a mechanical mosquito. Before I even hit the water, I spotted it. A black drone, hovering just above the treetops, watching, recording. It lingered, tilted side to side, then zipped off toward the street. I surfaced, blinking through water droplets, confused more than anything. But then, my phone buzzed from the table. Still dripping wet, I grabbed it. An alert. HOA violation notice. Timestamped to the minute. Accused of disturbing neighborhood peace through recreational pool use, and slapped with a $750 fine. My mouth hung open. The sun suddenly didn't feel warm anymore. It felt cold. What kind of world finds a man for cannonballing into his own pool? Just weeks ago, I thought I'd made the best decision of my life. My wife and I left behind the chaos of downtown, sirens, street noise, and inconsiderate neighbors, and bought a house in a neighborhood that claimed to be peaceful, family-friendly. The backyard had sealed the deal. A patch of soft grass, shady trees, and just enough room to install a modest pool. Not a giant, resort-sized thing, just something we could enjoy. After permits, budgeting, and a whole summer of sweat, that little slice of paradise was ours. It was where our daughter learned to swim, where my wife and I sipped lemonade after long days, where laughter echoed off the water like joy itself. And now, apparently, that joy was a violation. The message was cold, automated, citing unregistered aquatic activity, and excessive sound projection, whatever that meant. No mention of neighbor complaints, no warning, just a fine and judgment. Then I remembered the drone. My stomach sank. My fists clenched. Someone wasn't just annoyed. Someone was watching. And I had a pretty good guess who. When I walked inside, still wet from the pool, my wife took one look at my face and paused mid-fold with the laundry. I told her what happened, and her eyebrows lifted. Without a word, she pulled up the HOA portal on her tablet. There it was. A new rule, quietly added days ago. Backyard amenities visible or audible from public walkways are subject to shared community regulations to preserve aesthetic and environmental harmony. We had received no notice, no vote, no input. They'd just changed the rules. And suddenly, my pool, my sanctuary, was public enemy number one. But this wasn't just about chlorine or cannonballs anymore. It was about control. And someone with a clipboard and a drone, had declared war. Part 2. Karen's Rulebook Reign. I started asking around, casually at first, just a few neighbors. The ones I trusted not to run squealing to the HOA. And what I uncovered was a pattern. Anyone with something visible in their backyard, a trampoline, a bird feeder, even a painted shed, was suddenly getting cited. One neighbor told me she got written up because her wind chimes were causing sonic clutter. Another? Fined for having excessive color contrast on their patio furniture. And at the center of every single notice, one name kept popping up. Karen. Officially, she was listed as the head of the Community Compliance Subcommittee. But let's be real. She made that title up for herself. Unofficially, she was the self-declared queen of the cul-de-sac. I'd seen her before. Stiff posture, oversized sunglasses, always marching her tiny, trembling dog like she was on patrol. When we first moved in, she handed me a packet of HOA bylaws like it was a sacred scroll, and said with a smile that didn't touch her eyes, "Welcome to the community. We take pride in keeping things orderly." I tossed that packet in a drawer and forgot about it. Until now. At first I tried to laugh it off. I mean, a flamingo floaty being labeled a visual disturbance? It was absurd. But then more notices came. Another fine for prolonged aquatic noise. Then one for violating communal tranquility with sudden water displacement. Translation: my daughter cannonballed. Again. I emailed the HOA, politely, asking for clarification. No response. I asked if I could attend the next board meeting. They said the board wasn't open to homeowner attendance during policy discussions. That's when it hit me. This wasn't about rules. It wasn't about noise. It was about control. And Karen? She had all of it. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, flipping through the giant HOA binder we'd been given. It read more like a medieval manuscript than community guidelines. Pages upon pages, mailbox dimensions, hedge heights, even the angle at which seasonal decorations could be displayed. But nowhere, not once, did it say I couldn't use my pool. Still, the fines kept coming. My wife tried to talk me down, told me to let it go, but I couldn't. Because this wasn't just about water toys or cannonballs anymore. It was about freedom. It was about my home. And if Karen wanted to weaponize her clipboard, then she was about to find out what happens when you back the wrong neighbor into a corner. Part 3. The Fortress Blueprint. The next morning, I reviewed footage from my backyard camera. One of those motion-triggered types I installed mostly for raccoons. And there it was, clear as daylight. The drone, hovering low, circling the yard like a robotic hawk, before zipping off toward the same direction it always seemed to go. 2 houses down, Karen's place. I paused the video and stared at her backyard. There she was, standing stiff with her arms crossed and a tablet in hand, piloting the drone like a kid with a new toy. Except her toy came with fines, harassment, and intimidation. I debated marching down and knocking on her door right then and there. But something told me, no, she wants that confrontation, so instead, I started planning. That night, I opened my laptop and dove into every HOA document we'd received. I read line by line, every clause, footnote, and sub-rule. I even joined 3 online forums about property rights and privacy law. And that's when I found it. A clause buried deep in Article 4, Section 8, Subclause B. Fences not visible from the public street may exceed standard height limitations if built within the backyard's internal perimeter. I blinked, then smiled. Because what Karen had relied on was visibility. If she couldn't see, she couldn't fine. That night, under the kitchen light and with a cheap notebook in front of me, I drew the first sketch of what would become my retaliation. A wraparound privacy fortress. Not just a fence, but a statement. Tall cedar walls, thick planks, strategic angles to block every line of sight. I even added an overhead lattice to cover the one exposed corner near the pool, and mesh backing to make sure nothing got through. Not even Karen's drone's prying lens. By morning, I had a plan, and I started making calls. Contractors, fence companies, even a friend of a friend who owned a hardware store. And once I explained why I needed it, the drone, the fines, the HOA lunacy, every single one of them laughed. Not in disbelief, but in solidarity. One guy even said, "That's the best excuse I've ever heard to build a fortress. I'm in." By the end of the week, I had 3 estimates and a crew ready to start that Monday. Karen had no idea that while she was plotting with drones and fake rules, I was quietly constructing a wall she could never climb. Part 4. The day the hammers came down. Monday arrived, and with it the sound of justice, not in courtrooms, but in hammer strikes. Thud, thud, thud. The fence crew rolled in just after sunrise. I was in the driveway helping unload cedar planks when I heard it. That familiar stomp, stomp, stomp. Karen. She rounded the corner like a storm in sneakers, lips pursed, clipboard in hand, phone already out like it was a weapon. "Excuse me," she barked, stopping at the edge of my yard like she was holding back the tide with her glare. I turned, slow, deliberate, wiping sweat from my forehead. "Yes? What exactly do you think you're doing?" she snapped. "Building a fence," I said, cool as the lemonade in my fridge. "For privacy and noise reduction, just like your updated HOA regulation recommends." She blinked. I could see the wires short-circuiting in her brain. She hadn't expected me to use her own rules against her. "This looks taller than 6 feet, she hissed, eyeing the planks like they were treason. "Only on this side," I said, pulling the blueprint from my back pocket like it was a royal decree. "From the street view, it's fully compliant. Article 4, Section 8, Subclause B. Ring a bell." Her eyes darted to the paper, then back to me. I smiled, the kind of smile that says, "You're losing." "We'll see about that," she spat, already walking off while tapping furiously at her phone. But the crew kept working. Post holes dug, panels lifted, cement poured. And with every strike of the nail gun, I could feel the tension between us tightening like a stretched cord. By noon, the shape of the fortress was already rising. My pool, once exposed and vulnerable, was disappearing behind smooth cedar walls that smelled like freedom. The foreman, a burly guy named Felix with arms like tree trunks, gave me a nod. "This'll drive her nuts," he chuckled. "And the best part? You're following every single rule." That afternoon, Karen came back. This time she brought reinforcements. A younger woman trailed behind her, clipboard in hand, awkwardly adjusting her glasses. She introduced herself as Lori, vice president of the HOA board. She looked uncomfortable, almost apologetic. But Karen? She was already speaking before the gate closed behind her. "This fence violates community harmony and projected hostility," she said in her sharpest voice. I handed her a document, a printed email from the city's zoning office. It confirmed everything was permitted, legal, and well within code. Lori read it, blinked, then nodded. "We'll, need to review this at the next meeting," she mumbled. Karen, meanwhile, stood fuming. "You're isolating yourself from the community," she hissed. "You're setting a dangerous precedent." I looked her dead in the eyes. "I'm protecting my family's right to privacy. That's not a bad precedent. It's a necessary one." And with that, I turned and walked away. Behind me, the fence rose higher, not just in wood and nails, but in purpose. Part 5. Eyes in the sky, walls on the ground. By the next morning, my yard looked like a construction zone, and I'd never been prouder. The scent of cedar mixed with sawdust drifted in the breeze. And for the first time in weeks, I felt in control. But Karen, she wasn't done. Not even close. Her dog-walking route, which used to pass my house once a day, now came by 3 times, like clockwork. She lingered at the edge of my property, peeking through the slats, trying to catch a glimpse of anything she could write up. Her drone? Now it flew lower, slower, sometimes even hovering like it was confused why I couldn't see in anymore. And one afternoon, I caught her, standing across the street, with binoculars. I couldn't help it. I waved, not to be friendly, but to let her know I saw her too. And unlike before, I wasn't afraid anymore. That rattled her. The day the final wall panel went up felt like a declaration of independence. The crew packed up, gave me fist bumps, and left me with one last warning. Brace yourself. People like her. Don't take losing quietly. So, I didn't waste time. That night, I installed motion sensors around the perimeter. Subtle, but precise. They'd ping my phone anytime someone or something got too close. And wouldn't you know it? The very next morning, I got an alert. I checked the live feed, and there it was. The drone. Again. It hovered near the treetops, dipped low like it was curious, then quickly zipped away once it realized it had triggered something. No more footage for Karen, no more peeking. Unless she wanted to climb the fence herself, she was officially locked out. Over the next few days, I went all in. Installed string lights around the pool, planted ivy to grow along the exterior wall, even built a small cabana where I could work remotely, sip coffee, or just exist. My wife, skeptical at first, admitted it felt like our own private retreat. Our daughter called it the fort. Even Moose, our dog, seemed more relaxed. But deep down, I knew better. Karen wasn't gone. She was waiting. Because people like her, they don't quit. They escalate. And somewhere, behind that fake smile and passive-aggressive HOA title, she was planning her next move. I could feel it, like thunder rumbling in the distance. Something was coming. Part 6. The Red Envelope. It started with a knock I didn't hear, and an envelope I didn't expect, taped right to my front door. 3 crisp pages, folded with aggressive precision, stamped with HOA letterhead in bold, overly dramatic font. The title? Notice of Non-Compliance. Multiple Violations. I read it standing on the porch and then burst out laughing before I even finished the first paragraph. According to Karen, the acting HOA president, I was now being accused of operating a commercial venue, disturbing the peace with high-frequency aquatic activity. And my personal favorite, willful obstruction of community visibility. That last one was clearly a tantrum in legal form. She was mad that she couldn't see in anymore, and she wasn't hiding it. But I knew better than to ignore it, because while it was ridiculous, it meant something deeper. Karen was unraveling. Still, I stayed calm. I walked straight inside, sat down, and began compiling screenshots, permits, security footage of the drone, timestamps of every fine, even the exact moment she stood outside my gate for 10 straight minutes glaring at my fence like it had insulted her ancestors. I dropped everything into a cloud folder, titled it, Just in Case, and then I made a call to Todd. Todd wasn't just an old college buddy. He was a municipal attorney with a specialty in homeowner rights. Even better, he hated bullies. I didn't even finish explaining before he said, through a chuckle, "Oh man, she picked the wrong guy." Together we drafted a letter to the HOA. It outlined every overstep, every privacy violation, and every baseless accusation. It was firm, professional, and carried a message even Karen couldn't ignore. Back off, or we escalate. I printed 2 copies. The first, mailed it certified to the HOA office. The second, I slipped it into a bright red envelope and slid it under Karen's front door. If she wanted drama, she was going to get it. Professionally gift-wrapped. For 2 days, there was silence. No drone, no notes, not even her usual just walking my dog for the 4th time routine. but I knew her too well. This wasn't surrender. It was the quiet. Before the next wave. Part 7. Fake inspectors, real cameras. It was Wednesday morning, calm, birds chirping, moose lounging by the window, when 2 men showed up at my front gate, matching polos, clipboards, plastic badges that read HOA Property Integrity Division. I almost laughed. It sounded like a department invented by someone who watched too many courtroom dramas. Karen. Obviously. They stood straight, like mall cops with something to prove. "We're here to conduct a visual inspection of your backyard," one of them said, tone all business, "due to multiple complaints of unauthorized construction and community disruption." I raised an eyebrow and held out my hand. "Paperwork?" They handed over what looked official, until I looked closer. It wasn't a legal warrant, not a city document, just an internal HOA request form with no authority and no teeth. "Sorry," I said, smiling politely, "but this is private property. You'll need a court order to step past that gate." One of them looked irritated. The other started muttering about reporting back. Before they left, I gestured toward the new sign I'd posted. "Private property. No trespassing violators will be prosecuted." They backed off, and I backed everything up. I emailed the footage to Todd, titled it Karen's Gestapo Visit, then saved the security clips to 2 separate drives. That night I installed 2 more cameras, one aimed at the sidewalk, the other at the corner where Karen always parked. It wasn't paranoia, it was preparation. Because this wasn't about fences anymore. This was about drawing the line between sanity and control, between peace and persecution. And I was done letting Karen write the rules. Part 8. Karen goes too far. The very next day, another notice. This one was even more outrageous than the last. According to Karen, the HOA, I was now running a commercial pool venue. Why? Because I had a birthday party with 8 guests. No tickets, no ads, just close friends and family. We had cake, laughter, 1 floating unicorn. That was it. Karen claimed I was profiting off community resources and hosting unauthorized events. It would have been hilarious if it hadn't been so dangerous. Because now she wasn't just writing citations. She was laying the groundwork for something bigger, something legal. So I got ahead of it. I printed photos from the party, labeled with timestamps. I gathered the guest list, pulled receipts showing I bought everything myself. And best of all, I included security footage of Karen, driving by my house 4 times that day, slowing down every time she passed. I packaged it all and mailed it directly to the HOA board, along with a short, polite note. Please consider the frequency and nature of these complaints when assessing their validity. Translation? She's using your authority like a toy, and it's breaking. Later that week, I made my move. I attended my first ever HOA board meeting. Never thought I'd step foot in that room, but I walked in with a thick folder under my arm, a calm smile, and a few quiet allies in the crowd. Karen sat at the front like a royal judge, clipboard in position, face unreadable. But when she saw me, her eyes narrowed, her grip on the pen tightened. The meeting dragged through lawn maintenance and mailbox paint colors. Then came public comments. Karen tried to jump in early, claiming neighbor misconduct and community discord. But the HOA president, an older gentleman with tired eyes, raised a hand and said, "Let's hear what he has to say." So I stood, and I laid it all out. The permits, the fence codes, the drone footage, the timeline of notices, the harassment pattern, the privacy laws she had crossed. No yelling, no drama, just facts. By the time I finished, the room was silent. Karen didn't speak, couldn't speak. And when the president leaned forward and said, "We'll need to review this more closely," I knew. The tide had turned. Part 9. Lawsuit and Lightning. It didn't take long. Just 1 week after that HOA meeting, an envelope arrived. But this time, it wasn't from the HOA. It was from the county courthouse. Thick, heavy, official. I opened it slowly, and there it was. A civil lawsuit, filed against me, signed by none other than Karen, as acting HOA president. The accusations: property devaluation, community disruption, public nuisance. My crime? Using my own backyard pool. I stood there, stunned. It wasn't just the ridiculousness of it. It was how far she was willing to go. She had stopped hiding behind bylaws and drones. Now she was coming at me, with lawyers. My wife came outside, saw my face, and didn't say a word. She just placed her hand on my shoulder and stood beside me. That was all I needed. The next morning I called Todd. He laughed at first, the kind of "what is wrong with this woman" laugh, but the more I read, the more serious he got. "This isn't just petty," he said. "It's strategic. She wants to bury you in legal fees." But she didn't realize one thing. I was ready. Todd filed a motion to dismiss immediately, citing malicious prosecution and lack of merit. Then, we fired back. A countersuit, harassment, legal costs, emotional distress. If Karen wanted to go to war, we'd bring the legal artillery. While Todd handled the filings, I secured the home front. I hired a private security consultant to assess everything. We upgraded cameras to infrared, added extra locks, reinforced every entry point, posted new legal signage around the fence. Every step, documented, indexed, dated. Karen wouldn't find one crack to slip through. And, sure enough, she noticed. She was back on her porch the next evening, arms folded, watching every move the installers made like a hawk with a clipboard fetish. Even her two closest board members, the ones who used to nod at everything she said, were now whispering nervously on the sidewalk. Something was shifting. Her image as protector of the neighborhood was crumbling. And underneath it, a woman obsessed with power and running out of it. Part 10. Courtroom Showdown. The court date came faster than expected, just under 3 weeks from the summons, and I was ready. I cleared my calendar, stayed up late reviewing every document with Todd. We practiced responses, organized evidence, built a binder so thick it could double as a defensive wall. On the morning of the hearing, my wife came with me, calm, steady, unshaken. We walked into that fluorescent courtroom together. And there she was, Karen. Pressed blazer, sharp heels, a look of icy confidence. But her eyes betrayed her. She wasn't sure anymore. Her lawyer, a guy who looked like he regretted accepting her case, shuffled beside her, clearly aware he'd stepped into a circus. Karen's side went first. Her attorney tried painting me as some rogue neighbor. Hostile, uncooperative, disruptive to the community. He rambled on about property value drops and increased neighborhood tension, but he had no evidence, no witnesses, just vague claims and printouts of floaty unicorns. Then it was our turn. Todd stood, calm as ever, and dismantled every point like he was carving butter with a scalpel. He presented property permits, zoning approvals, video clips of Karen's drone, email chains documenting harassment, HOA bylaws highlighting every contradiction, and even federal privacy laws she had violated. He didn't raise his voice, didn't grandstand. He just let the facts do the talking. The judge, visibly irritated that the case had even made it this far. When the ruling came, it was like thunder. Case dismissed, with prejudice. Karen's lawsuit was dead, buried, and she couldn't file again. But the judge didn't stop there. He ordered Karen to pay my legal fees and fined her for abuse of the legal system. I watched her face melt in real time, from smugness to shock to something that almost looked like fear. She opened her mouth, probably to protest, but her own lawyer gently tugged her sleeve and shook his head. It was over. After the hearing, Todd clapped me on the back. "That," he said, "was one of the most satisfying wins I've had all year." My wife hugged me, whispered, "I never doubted you." That night, we had dinner by the pool, just the three of us, and moose curled by our feet. No drones, no fines. No clipboard in sight, just peace, and the sound of water lapping gently, like the world was finally exhaling. Part 11. The petition that ended her reign. Karen lost in court, but she still had her throne. As HOA president, she still held power, still had that clipboard and rule book and whisper network, and if she couldn't beat me in court, she'd find another way to make life miserable, not just for me, but for anyone who dared breathe without her permission. I couldn't let it go on. So I made a decision. It wasn't enough to protect my backyard. I had to protect the entire neighborhood from the rot that had crept into its leadership, and for that, I needed an army. According to HOA bylaws, if a majority of homeowners signed a petition, we could trigger a special election to replace the board. All I needed were signatures. That night, I printed forms, made a spreadsheet, outlined every address I'd seen since moving in, every porch, every name, every neighbor who ever waved at me hesitantly but didn't speak. And then I started knocking, door to door, rain or shine, clipboard in hand, not as a weapon, but as a symbol of something Karen had forgotten: choice. Some didn't open the door. Some peeked and turned away. They were scared. I could feel it. But others, slowly, started listening. I told them the truth about the drones, the fake violations, the lawsuit, the spying, the intimidation. One neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, had lived here longer than anyone. She read the petition, looked me in the eyes, and said, "It's about time someone stood up to her." She signed. Then a young couple with a toddler signed. Then a retired firefighter. Then a single mom who said Karen once fined her for planting tulips that were too bright. One by one, the wall started crumbling. By the end of the week, I had more than enough signatures. I filed the petition formally, hand-delivered a copy to the HOA office with a time-stamped receipt. That afternoon, a community bulletin was posted by the clubhouse. Karen's response? A frantic, passive-aggressive wall of text warning about radical changes and outsider influence. She didn't say my name, but she didn't have to. Everyone knew. But this time, they didn't listen to her. They listened to each other. Neighbors who hadn't spoken in years started waving, talking, laughing again. Someone even set up a lemonade stand on the corner, the kind of thing Karen would have crushed instantly. Now, it was thriving. The vote was scheduled for 2 weeks later, and when that night came, the community center was packed, not with Karen's rule-following loyalists, but with families, retirees, new couples, people tired of being afraid of their own yards. The votes were cast, and when the final count was read aloud, Karen and her two closest allies were removed, in a landslide. No yelling, no cheering, just a long collective exhale, like a weight had been lifted from every lawn, every porch, every mailbox. Karen stood slowly, picked up her clipboard, and walked out the door without saying a word, not a flinch, not a stomp, just a quiet exit, like a shadow finally swallowed by its own silence. Part 12. The Pool That Fought Back, Finale. The week after the vote. Felt like the neighborhood woke up from a long, controlling dream. Kids played louder, yards looked brighter, someone tied balloons to their mailbox, and no one ripped them down. No more warnings, no more fines for sidewalk chalk or porch plants. People waved at me more, not out of politeness, but gratitude. They knew. That pool, that fence, the whole ridiculous battle, it hadn't just been about me. It had been about all of us. One morning, I passed by Karen's house and saw it. A plain white sign planted in the grass, for sale. No open house, no goodbye, just gone. I didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. Truth is, I felt sorry for her. She had fought so hard to control everyone else's happiness that she forgot how to have her own. And that was punishment enough. A month later, a young family moved in. 2 boys, one obsessed with bikes, the other with anything that made noise. Their laughter echoed through the cul-de-sac. The parents were kind, warm, surprised at how welcoming everyone was. Before they left, the older boy looked up at me and asked, "Is it true you have the pool that fought back?" I smiled. "Only if you earn an invitation." That night, I sat by the water, drink in hand, feet dangling into the cool ripples. The stars reflected on the surface like tiny winks of victory. My wife sat beside me. Our daughter danced barefoot on the patio. Even Moose seemed to smile in his sleep. It was quiet, not the forced silence of HOA harmony, but real peace. And as I turned off the pool lights and locked the gate for the night, I paused. Not because I was afraid, but real peace. And as I turned off the pool lights and locked the gate for the night, I paused. Not because I was afraid, but because I finally felt it. This wasn't just the end of a feud. It was the beginning of a neighborhood that finally remembered how to live free. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't just protecting my home. I was part of something worth protecting.